What's up guys, Alex back with another video. In today's video, we're going to be doing a brake bleed on the GOAT Power Bike's Billy Goat. The bleeding process will be the same for all of the GOAT Power Bikes and almost all mountain bikes and other e-bikes. So for a few instances, why we would do a brake bleed is because the levers might get squishy, or it's been a few years since you've done a brake bleed. So that's what we'll be doing today. The brake lever is squishy on this bike. We'll show you guys in a couple of minutes. What we will need for this is a bicycle bleed kit. It does not need to be a Park Tool one. You can find numerous different bleed kits on the internet. We'll need some mineral oil and a 5mm and 3mm Allen key, along with some clean rags or paper towels. So let's get into it. For this bike, it's going to be the front brake, which is actually on the right side. We have the brake switched on this bike, but as you can see, we can pull the lever all the way back and it's not engaging the brake. This is just because there might be some air in the system or there's not enough fluid in the system. So what we're going to do is do a full brake bleed on it. First step, we're gonna take our 5mm Allen key and we're going to take off the caliper. Make sure you remember where the spacers are and where the spacer is located. There's a bigger portion right here than at the bottom. Once you have that removed, you see we have our brake caliper here. Next step will be to take out the brake pads. Using our 3mm Allen key, we will remove the pin. Remove the pads. As you can see, these pads are pretty new, so we won't be replacing them, but usually it's good to replace the pads while you do this. These brake pads actually look like they're in good condition. They have plenty of pad left, so we're not going to replace them, but usually it's good to replace the brake pads when you're doing a brake bleed. So once we put in these spacers to make sure that these pistons stay compressed, we are going to take our 3mm Allen key and remove this top bolt from the caliper. With that, we take that out, make sure that there's not a little gasket in there. Set that aside. In our kit, we're going to find the right adapter. For this one, it's our purple one in the Park Tool kit. We're gonna screw it on there. Once that's screwed on there, we are going to take our syringe. Once we have our syringe, we're going to take our mineral oil, that should be enough. Be careful of spillage. Just make sure with any spillage you keep it away from the brake rotors. We don't want to contaminate that, otherwise our brakes will be very squeaky. Now that we have it all set up at the bottom, we're going to do the similar thing at the top. We're gonna come up to the brake lever, remove the bolt. Now that we're at the top, we're going to get our funnel and the same adapter. Once we have the adapter on, we can put the funnel on. Normally we would want, if your brake lever is angled down too much, we want to bring it up, so we'll actually do that with our 5mm. Angle it up just so that the air bubbles can flow up to the top of the reservoir better. With that, we will put just a little bit of mineral oil in our funnel, keeping the plunger in until we're ready to bleed. But now with that, we can remove our plunger, come down to our syringe, and what we will do is push fluid to the top, and as you can see up at the top, you can see it's filling up and there are bubbles coming out. So it looked like we had a lot of air bubbles in our system. So we basically just want to keep pushing fluid in and out, sucking the fluid out and pushing it back in until we don't see any more air bubbles. Once we get all these air bubbles out of the syringe, we will go up again. Now that we have all the air bubbles out of the system, we will put our plunger back on top. Put the plunger back on so that no fluid can escape and go down. Then we will remove our syringe. We'll clamp the syringe shut just so we don't get any spillage. With that, there might be some spillage. That's why after we'll come in with our paper towel or a clean rag and just clean up any spillage before we reinstall it onto the bike. But with the clamps installed on the brake, we can test. We can take off our plunger now that we have resecured the bolt to the caliper. And as you can see, you give it a couple pumps. You can see there's still air bubbles coming out of the top. This is called a burp. Now with the syringe off of the caliper, our piston compressor is still in. We will take our plunger off the top. We want to make sure we do not press the lever if our compressor is not in. If there's nothing holding the pistons in to the caliper, then the pistons can fall out and then we'll have to redo the bleed. Just wipe off the caliper. We don't want to leave any residue behind. Now we can go ahead and reinstall our pads. Put the pads in. All right, now we can reinstall the caliper onto the bike's wheel. Remember, the larger spacer was on top, so we'll use the longer bolt for the top. Bolt in, spacer, and then the big spacer. Just do that, put the caliper on, and then we can do the same for the bottom. We're not going to tighten it all the way. We're going to tighten it almost all the way. And then we can hold our brake lever. And as we can see, it's nice and tight now, much better. We're going to hold our brake lever, and as we're holding the lever, we will then snug up these bolts. That usually will align the caliper evenly so we don't have any brake rub. Awesome. Now for the final steps, we will come up here, make sure we put our plunger in, remove the cone. We'll set our cone away. There might be some residue when you take the cone off. We'll just wipe it off and it's all good to go. Now you can see our brake lever is nice and tight. We just want to get all the air bubbles out of there, push out the air bubbles and replace those bubbles with fluid. We don't want any bubbles in the line, otherwise it's not going to brake efficiently. Now that we've just completed a brake bleed for the front brakes, you now have the knowledge to do it for almost any of the other GOAT power bikes and any other e-bikes, except for the Hulk GOAT, which is more of a motorcycle type brake. But for any e-bikes that have the standard hydraulic brake system, unless it's SRAM, those use a dot fluid. The process is almost the exact same for all hydraulic brakes. You basically just want to remove all the air bubbles and replace those air bubbles with fluid. And for that, we have completed this video, and let us know down below if you guys have any other questions for your e-bike repair needs.